It's showtime.
It's the pre-party with J. Cal.
We are professional wrestling.
I'm building an alliance.
You are tuned into
the absolute top of the mountain, the ultimate professional wrestling.
Alliance-wrestling.com.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the pre-party. Ow! A presentation of Alliance-wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. I am J. Cal. This is my pre-party, and guys, I'm a little jacked up because we got some good news. We got the NWA. The steam from the smokestack is starting to rise. It looks like things are going back into production. Speaking of production, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood starts its episodic television again this week. So all the local outlets, whether it be KDOC, Channel 56, or the CW30 in Memphis, they are in production. The shows are going to be live starting this week. Tampa Bay is their new affiliate, and it is so cool to see the NWA back in action, back in traction, right? It's cool to see Championship Wrestling from Hollywood back at it. I said the NWA, I meant Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. The NWA is starting to come along. The NWA is starting to move forward. Like I said, the smokestacks are starting to have that steam rise up. The Foundry is burning, right? Because that steel sharpens steel, and the heat and everything else. Because our World's Heavyweight Champion, the national treasure, Nick Aldis, walked into North Richland Hills, Texas, and walked out still your World's Heavyweight Champion. Nick Aldis, it's kind of funny because he's had a very, very complicated week. Nick Aldis was always supposed to be a part of Prime Time Live. He was always the man who was going to be on the card. We knew that the 10 pounds of gold would be defended on September 15th, the inaugural episode. Oh, you guys still hear music? Oh, that's a bummer. Should we start over? The NWA Worlds Heavyweight Champion walked into North Richland Hills, Texas, not knowing who his opponent was going to be for that night because the night before, Nobi Bryant outlasted several men to get an opportunity to wrestle for the World's Heavyweight Champion. Nobi Bryant is a former NWA Texas champion. Nobi Bryant was scheduled to be a part of a triple threat match. Nobi Bryant had the auspicious? He had the hard task of trying to keep up with what was supposed to be Jeff Cobb and the NWA Worlds Heavyweight Champion, Nick Aldis. Now, in a triple threat match, you don't have to beat the champ to walk out with the belt. So Nobi Bryant was walking into that match with a little bit of an advantage, knowing that he could pin Jeff Cobb to win that title. He could pin Nick Aldis to win that title. And of course, Nick Aldis had to pin one of those guys. But something happened. We did not get Jeff Cobb in that match. And for an old school NWA fan like myself, we got a different picture in that main event match. We didn't get Jeff Cobb, Nick Aldis, Nobi Bryant. We got two men in another ring. One walked out with the title. But we got Nobi Bryant. I don't want to call him a kid, but he was representing Texas that night. He was representing the Texas independent wrestling scene. Nobi Bryant is no stranger to the National Wrestling Alliance. As we aforementioned, he's a former NWA Texas Tag Team Champion. He'd been in matches with some of our favorite wrestlers like Tim Storm, like Jack Stane. He currently represents the represents Texas while wrestling for Southeastern Wrestling Entertainment. Southwestern. Man, am I just blowing it today? Southwestern Wrestling Entertainment. We had Nobi Bryant again walk into North Richland Hills and had this, daunting task. But for that match to become one-on-one, for me as a traditionalist, I prefer one-on-one professional wrestling matches. And I think you have to tip your hat, if I was wearing one, and celebrate what Nobi Bryant was able to do, because he put on one hell of a match with Nick Aldis. And he represented Texas well. I hope that this isn't the last time we see Nobi Bryant. But again, you also have to tip your hat to the man who's rapidly approaching 700 days as World's Heavyweight Champion. The national treasure, the dealer, if you will. I'm going to start calling him Prime Time, because Prime Time Nick Aldis walked out of North Richland Hills as your NWA champion after a 7-month hiatus, after finding out who his challenge will be on Friday. I mean, he went to our friends, the boys, the Bearded Trio, the This Is the NWA podcast on Friday. They actually replayed that on the NWA YouTube channel, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. But I think it's really cool that, number one, they included, some of the content creators that have been supporting the NWA for the past 6 months. But he went on there and accepted the challenge of Mike Bennett. The Miracle Mike Bennett, the former TNA X Division champion Mike Bennett, the former Ring of Honor Tag Team Champion Mike Bennett, the IWGP Tag Team Champion, former Tag Team Champion Mike Bennett. Not Mike Canales, not some caricature of a sports entertainer, but a pro wrestler Mike Bennett. A very hungry pro wrestler Mike Bennett. And it's kind of interesting because April 15th, the WWE released a ton of talent. A lot of names were dismissed from that roster. A lot of names would have made very, very appropriate challenges to Nick Aldis in the 10 pounds of gold. But each and every one of them have to have the same mindset that Nick Aldis had when he challenged Tim Storm for the 10 pounds of gold. And that is, I'm here to make my name mean something. I'm here to create my own legacy. I'm here to build my brand. See where I'm going with this? Mike Bennett is convinced that the only way he could recapture his name and make it mean something again is a victory over Nick Aldis. But isn't that exactly what Nick Aldis did to Tim Storm 2 years ago? And don't tell me that our World's Heavyweight Champion is beyond reproach. Don't tell me that Nick Aldis can't be beat, because we're 2 years removed to the very damn day that Nick Aldis lost his World's Heavyweight Championship to Cody. Think about that, guys. The Miracle Mike Bennett is just as hungry as anybody else. And he's gotten lean. He's gotten mean. And he's looking for a fight. This is about legacy. And he's looking to build his off the back of Prime Time Nick Aldis. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. I wasn't sold on this match initially, but I got to tell you, the excitement that I'm seeing from around our hashtag NWA fam, it's getting me jacked up. Prime Time Live, 2 weeks away. Miracle Mike Bennett challenging our World's Heavyweight Championship. World's Heavyweight Champion. This, I also want to talk about, too. So, this was, again, I said this was a very interesting week for Nick Aldis. And something I want everyone to kind of marinate on. People ask me, hey, look at Nick Aldis, number 15 on the Pro Wrestling Illustrated 500. Has that ever happened before? Has an NWA World Champion ever been at number 15? The short answer is yes. The long answer is, since 1993, there have been a myriad of World Heavyweight Champions. From Shane Douglas to Nick Aldis and all points in between. And only one of them didn't appear in the top 500 when they were World Champion. Spoiler alert, it's Mike Rapata. But I took the undaunting task of compiling our World's Heavyweight Champions and where they've ranked up on the Pro Wrestling Illustrated list over the past few years. I want to point out that, yes, Nick Aldis in 2020 did, in fact, break the top 15. He's number 15 on the list. It should be noted that when Aldis was world champion elsewhere, he had fallen, or he was as high on the list as number 8. But there have been some champions in the past who have beat that 15 spot. The aforementioned Cody Rhodes, who 2 years ago won the NWA Worlds Heavyweight Championship, he was ranked number 8. If you want to go beyond the quote-unquote wilderness years, Dr. Robert Stinson, I know you're in here. Blue Demon in 2009 broke the top 25. He was number 22. Rob Conway, Jack Stane, Kojima, Tenzin, Tim Storm. None of these guys ever broke the top 25. Adam Pearce never broke the top 25. Jeff Jarrett in 2006 was ranked number 10. Cage was number 12. Sting was just short at number 26. In 2005, Jarrett was number 11. AJ Styles was number 7. In 2004, Jarrett was number 12. Styles was number 8. Ron the Truth Killings was number 18. In 2003, Jarrett was number 15. AJ Styles was number 11. So again, there is history of our World's Heavyweight Champion breaking those top 500 list, breaking the top 25, but very few have gotten below the top 15, and we just pointed those out to you. And again, the list only started, they started this top 500 in 1991, so I mean that's pretty extensive. From 94, I covered from 94 to 2020. And again, the lowest spot on the list was AJ Styles at number 7, and then Cody Rhodes was number 8 in 2018. So I think that's pretty impressive. So we spent some time talking about Nick Aldis, and again, banner week for him, because not only is the internet buzz starting to, really pick up for this Prime Time Live on September 15th, which will be available on Fight TV and traditional pay-per-view services, but we also are going to see our women's champion enter the foray of pay-per-view. She's going to be a part of the All Out. Of course, we talked about it at length last week, where she challenged Shida. Am I saying that right? The AEW Women's Champion. Shida, for the AEW Women's Championship. Now that's going to take place September 5th, just a few days away. The interesting thing about Thunder Rosa is she's also booked to be a part of Prime Time Live on September 15th on Fight TV. So we're going to see, we're seeing the NWA starting to move forward. We're seeing the machine and the cogs and the wheels starting to take these minor steps in the positive forward direction. You know, the NWA's YouTube channel, I wrote about this yesterday. The NWA's YouTube channel basically went silent on June 17th. Exactly 75 days later, the NWA produced its first piece of content in, like I said, 75 days. And it was interesting. It was the top 5 moments of, or most exciting moments of NWA Power. And again, why is that important? Because it shows that they're trying to start generating interest again. Now, I'm not saying that I have a schedule of when Power is coming back, and Power might not come back this year, guys. The Crockett Cup might not come back this year, but we are starting to see the NWA producing content, or using content creators to create content for them. The NWA, this is the NWA podcast. That relationship with those fine gentlemen and the NWA, I mean, it's been very synergetic. It's a relationship that I'd like to foster with the NWA as well. I do foster that relationship with those boys. But, you know, they literally took their show and put that on the NWA channel. Now, that wasn't Joe Galley interviewing Nick Aldis. You know, that wasn't Stu Bennett. That wasn't an Inside the NWA. That wasn't, you know, that was This is the NWA podcast. And don't let the name confuse you. There's not a connection on the surface. But, of course, I mean, those guys deserve that opportunity to have themselves on that channel, on the NWA channel. And, you know, the NWA is lucky to have content creators that are willing to put out that content. Between This is the NWA and us over here at the Alliance blog, I mean, I've been doing this show since November. They've been doing their thing since probably October, November as well. And every week there's been content being created for the National Wrestling Alliance, even when the NWA went silent. So kudos to my brothers over there, the Bearded Trio. That's Dr. Rob Stinson. That's Will Martin. And, of course, the very, very friendly Gary Horn. Sorry, I was thinking about Tequila Gary there for a minute. If you guys don't watch that show or have not subscribed to it yet, you got to do it, man. They're talking so much wrestling every week. It's insane. They do about 3 hours. 3 hours is maybe an over-exaggeration, but they do a show later today. I believe it starts at 8 p.m. Eastern, but just check out their channel. And then also they do a Sunday show as well. Of course, Will Martin and I do a show every Friday. It's called The Hot Tag, and we talk about the NWA. Hope you guys are checking that out as well. You guys have been very busy in the comments section, so we'll get to that in just a minute. But again, just want to make sure that the camera didn't go off on me, and it did. Sorry, guys. Great. Hang on just a second. I'm a perfectionist. It's got to look good. As you can see, I'm wearing my NWA 70th anniversary shirt. So, we've kind of already covered a few things. Of course, Thunder Rosa making her impact, no pun intended, in AEW. We've talked about the week that Nick Aldis has had, and now we're going to go to your comments, which are plentiful. Robert Stinson got me on that inauspicious. Leave it to the school teacher to correct me. Robert Stinson's Nobi Bryant is legit. And the thing about, let's go back to Nobi Bryant for a few minutes since you left a comment about him. Nobi Bryant, he's been in the ring with some great talent. Last year he spent about 2 months in All Japan Pro Wrestling, teaming with fellow former NWA alum Paro, who you guys might remember from the NWA 70th anniversary show. Paro and Odinson make up the End in All Japan Pro Wrestling, and Nobu Bryant had teamed with them against guys, like Kenta Miyahara, no big deal. And those kind of excursions where you're wrestling in Japan, not for a day, not for a show, not for a week, but for a month and 2 months, really helps define you as a wrestler, really helps build that higher level. Because when you wrestle the indies, let's be honest, if you're lucky as an independent wrestler, maybe you get to work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There are very few promotions that run Monday through Thursday. Occasionally there is, but not very often. So having the opportunity to wrestle 4 days a week, 3 days a week, 5 days a week is really good at help developing your skills. Again, wrestling is a sport where you need to have repetition. And it certainly is a sport where steel sharpens steel. If you go wrestle every day against some lesser known talent, some lesser able talent, it's going to do nothing to make you a good competitor. When you look at champions like Nick Aldis, who's taken on Cody Rhodes, didn't hesitate to step in the ring with Cody Rhodes, or Marty Scurll, or Jack Hager, or the myriad of other names that are on that list. That's how you get to be a champion. That's how you get to be great. Adam Pearce wrestled Charlie Haas. Adam Pearce wrestled Bryan Danielson. Adam Pearce wrestled some of the top names. And that's how you get to be a good champion. That's how you get to be a great champion. So for Nobu Bryant, who's spending time wrestling in Japan, All Japan Pro Wrestling, and having these opportunities to wrestle every day against top-tier talent, that says a lot. And I really hope that Nobu Bryant, this wasn't the last time we saw him connected with the NWA. I hope that down the road, when Power is looking to regrow and relaunch, that I hope somebody like Nobu Bryant is first on that list of people to call. He's got connections with Tim Storm. Why not? Willie Bowen, how you doing, sir? Appreciate you being on here today. Dave Scooby says, it's going to take a miracle to beat Aldis. I'm sure pun was intended there. Just glad to be getting the return of some real wrestling. Bennett also has some history with Cody. Down the line, could there be a three-way dance for the title? So, here's the thing about Prime Time Live. This is the United Wrestling Network's Prime Time Live in conjunction with the NWA. A lot of people think that this show is replacing NWA Power. That is not the case. This is the United Wrestling Network's show. This isn't the first time that the NWA has partnered with other wrestling promotions to provide content. The NWA partnered with Ring of Honor in the past. Hell, they had a partnership with Ring of Honor just 6 months ago, where NWA talent would appear in Ring of Honor and vice versa. The NWA working with TNA was a little bit different, but essentially the same deal. There was the TNA Wrestling that was licensing the NWA title, but that world champion, those tag team champions, were still recognized by the NWA, and those champions on occasion did defend outside of Impact Wrestling. When Adam Pearce was World's Heavyweight Champion, he took that belt to WXW. He even teamed with Walter. I don't know if you guys remember, you probably don't remember that, but Pearce teamed with Walter before Walter ever stepped onto the NXT soil. He had partnered with Pearce for a night. And then Pearce had also wrestled the likes of Zack Sabre Jr. in the UK, but I'm getting a little bit off point. He wrestled in WFX Wrestling, which was a Canadian pay-per-view company. Even going back to the NWA working with World Wrestling All-Stars in the early 2000s, the World Wrestling All-Stars was a touring wrestling company where they actually unified the WWA Championship held by Sting with Jeff Jarrett's NWA Worlds Heavyweight Championship. So, there is a history of these promotions working together. And, Dave Marquez is a smart man. The NWA is a hot brand. It's a hot commodity. They were drawing upwards of 200,000 people on each one of those YouTube NWA Power episodes, and some of them much, much more than that. So if those 200,000 eyeballs jump onto this pay-per-view, Dave Marquez is going to be a very happy man. Lamb says, it's funny how people forget the history of Billy Corgan and Mike Bennett have. I mean, the build-up a storyline on Impact Wrestling when Corgan was there, maybe they'll remember that for the pay-per-view. I'm sure that had something to play in Mike Bennett getting this opportunity, because, I mean, there was a myriad of opponents that would have made a lot of sense. I mean, hell, you could have just went to the Power roster, Trevor Murdoch getting his shot at the title. Eli Drake has yet to receive an opportunity to face Nick Aldis. James Storm still would like to have another shot at that title. Hell, Tim Storm, he promised he wouldn't be able to challenge for that World's Heavyweight Championship, but he would love to have another opportunity to face our World's Heavyweight Champion, Nick Aldis. I mean, Jax Dane, Crimson, there's so many guys who would love to have another crack at the 10 pounds of gold, and they went with Mike Bennett. And again, I'm not trying to sour anybody on Mike Bennett. The guy is a champion. And much to what Gary Horn was saying last week, he's hungry. So he has a lot to prove. This matchup, one way or the other, win, lose, or draw, is going to help establish Mike Bennett in the world of independent wrestling if he doesn't sign with the NWA. Willie Bowen says, what about Barry Windham, Kenji Muda, Shinya Hashimoto? Where were they ranked? Again, I didn't really go past 1993 on that list, Willie Bowen. I stuck from 94 to 2020. And so those champions of that era, it's not that I didn't want to include them. It's just I was trying to think of the post-WCW era of the NWA. And, of course, those guys were still probably on that list. But the champions that I pulled and the time that I pulled them was when they were still World's Heavyweight Champion in that year. So like in 2018 when Cody Rhodes was ranked number 8, that was part of the time where he won the title at All In. I mean, in that era. So, yeah. And Dr. Robert Simpson is thanking me. But yeah, man, I mean, you guys deserve it. It's the synergy. Where do I begin? When I started doing this podcast, I did it alone back in 2007, talking about the NWA. My show grew to include 2 more co-hosts, Devin Mercer, DKM, and Jaden, and we were talking NWA, and we had a blast. But we were the only ones talking NWA for many, many, many years. Now, the show did have its hiatus in 2016, and I mean, we had sporadic episodes here and there, but when we started doing the video podcasts, that was inspired a lot by what they were doing over at This Is the NWA, what Adam Rotella was doing, and the 10 Pounds of Podcast. And, of course, like those two guys, I'm kind of motivated by what Gary Vee says. My intention was never to be in front of the camera. My intention was to celebrate the NWA and help promote it. So once we finally got this synergy where a lot of us are starting to work together, so between This Is the NWA and the Alliance blog, we have this great synergy. On my team, I still have the World's Junior Heavyweight Champion, former World's Junior Heavyweight Champion Kevin Douglas. DKM, we still do This Is the Alliance blog. Not This Is the Alliance blog. The Alliance blog podcast, the Alliance guys. Then I'm also working with Tim over at the NWA Gold. And Tim, I don't have his channel in front of me, and I'm just gonna spitball here. You can find him on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. It's the NWA Gold, and we have some plans to talk about some NWA championships in the future that we'll do videos for as well. So I mean, the synergy right now is an all-time high where content creators for the NWA are working together, and I think that's incredible. What's even more incredible to me is that the NWA is recognizing that value. They're recognizing the value that the Bearded Trio are bringing to fans of the NWA. I hope they recognize the value that the Alliance blog is bringing to the NWA, because we're all trying to do the same thing, and that's promote something we love. I don't think Gary Horn or Dr. Robert Stinson or Will Martin are looking for, an active role on the NWA, program. But if the NWA wants to work with these guys and give them an opportunity to showcase their podcast on that YouTube channel, if they ever want to reach out to me and give me an opportunity, I think that's great. I think that's awesome, and I hope that the NWA continues to do that. They're still trying to establish what they're going to do next. As far as I know, they're still working on setting up the new structure for the NWA. So I think it's definitely in their best interest to recognize the content creators who are pushing that brand and helping to keep it relevant in a time where things aren't so easy and it's a little murky. Let's see. Willie Bowen says, Dave Marquez should add All Japan Pro Wrestling to the United Wrestling Network. Willie, I agree with you, but to an extent, you have to remember that this working relationship has to make sense for both sides. The All Japan Pro Wrestling, as I know, is not interested in developing a promotion in the United States. And there's very little that the United Wrestling Network can do for All Japan Pro Wrestling. Their shows are consistent. They're wrestling all the time. The talent that are on those cards, like I said, Nobi Bryant was wrestling 3 or 4 days, or 4 to 5 days a week when he was in All Japan Pro Wrestling. Championship Wrestling from Hollywood tapes twice a month. Now with the United Wrestling Network Prime Time Live, they'll be taping weekly 90-minute shows, but it's not just exclusive Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. So the opportunity to showcase people from All Japan would be great, but I mean, we're also in the middle of a travel ban because of the COVID-19 outbreak and the global pandemic. And Canadians can't even come to this country, so let alone flying talent from Japan or vice versa. And there is a promotion that the United Wrestling Network is working with, the Middle Kingdom Wrestling, who just launched their YouTube channel, and it's, again, in similar fashion to what NWA Power was, similar fashion to what Championship Wrestling from Hollywood is a studio wrestling environment with limited number of fans, and they're trying to make these things more accessible for the fans. You should definitely check out Middle Kingdom Wrestling, because again, they are partnered with the Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, and who knows, with these travel restrictions, and we may see some of the Chinese talent compete here in the United States, maybe on a future episode of the United Wrestling Network Primetime Live. Dave Scooby says, the Bennett can go in the ring. I sense that Maria may interfere, so Camille may be involved as well. Yeah, so, I mean, that's another aspect to it, too. I mean, Camille, I'm assuming Camille's going to be at the tapings. I'm also assuming Thomas Latimer's going to be at those tapings. I don't know for sure. There's nothing been handed to me. There's no actual total fight card. I mean, what we have scheduled for right now, what we know, what we can expect on September 15th is we're going to have Alexander Hammerstone defend his West Coast Pro Wrestling Championship against EJ Sparks, who's from Championship Wrestling from Arizona. So that's the first match that was announced. We also know that Chris Dickinson is planning to make an appearance. We also know that Thunder Rosa will be there with the Burke. Maybe the AEW Championship as well. And then we know, now we finally have the match announced. The 10 pounds of gold on the line. The Miracle Mike Bennett challenging the Real World's Champion, the National Treasure, the Prime Time Nick Aldis. And so that's going to be interesting. But outside of that, you know, that's a 90-minute show. What else is going to be there? We know Ray Rosas, Adrian Fuego, Adrian Young Fuego. I always get his name mixed up. Young Fuego, Adrian Quest, thank you, and Andy Brown. They're collectively known as Static. That is the Championship Wrestling from Hollywood Heritage Champion, the Championship Wrestling from Arizona State Champion, and the United Wrestling Network Tag Team Champion. Static will be there. I imagine the Wolf Zaddies will be on the show. There's a good chance that Aaron Stevens should be on the show. There was even talk about the Man Scout showing up on that. I think it's Jake Alexander. I think that's his name. I don't have it written down. So you never know what you're going to get, but hopefully it's going to be something exciting. Prime Time Live, again, is set to air September 15th. We still don't have a price point, and it's still not even available to order on Fight TV, but rest assured, ladies and gentlemen, or let's face it, gentlemen, that pay-per-view is certainly going to be something to watch. I actually reached out to Dave Marquez and said, look, Dave, and this probably won't happen. It probably won't happen. But I was at the very first New Japan USA TV taping back in 2004. I think that was in Santa Monica. That was a Dave Marquez produced event. I was at the very first NWA Pro showcase, those TV tapings. I was at the very first NWA Pro Wrestling showcase. Those also happened in Southern California before they took the show to Vegas. I was at the very first NWA Hollywood TV taping. I was also at the very first Championship Wrestling from Hollywood TV taping. You know, when one of them was the pilot, and then they started producing more of the NWA Pro Wrestling Showcase, and then they went back to Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. That was in Santa Ana. I was there too. I was also at the very first set of NWA Power tapings. So I told David, we have history here. There's a link. I've been at every single one of these inaugural TV tapings, and I think it's only fitting, Dave, that I should be in Long Beach at the Thunder Studios to be there for the first United Wrestling Network Prime Time Live. He still hasn't gotten back to me, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, let's see. Robert Simpson says, I absolutely believe that there are big opportunities coming for the Freebirds. Aldis, Marquez, and Moraine deeply understand and appreciate your value. Why? That's nice. And thank you, Dr. Robert Stinson. I know that David Marquez and we have a great relationship. I've known him for about 20 years now. And that's really weird for me to say because I don't feel that old, but I guess I am. The Bearded Trip are definitely going somewhere right now. You don't get haters if you're not. They had a couple of haters in the live stream earlier. You know, and that's funny to me. I've always been one of those guys that support what you love and disregard if you don't care. But, you know, that it's part of the game. I have one guy who hates my guts, but outside of that, I don't think anyone else does. And, Ron Gibson says, I'm late, but strange to see Jay Sans hat. Yeah, I decided to show off my quarantine cut. I've actually been keeping it very, very short. And honestly, I didn't like the aesthetic of the hat on my face. I felt like it blocked too much of this good-lookingness. Wrestling with MMA says, I have a treat for you, Stinson. It'll pop. Okay, that's something else. And then Ron also corrected me about... Man Scout Jake Manning. Jake Alexander is actually a wrestler out here in Southern California. Totally different guy. Michael Manning says he hopes that Shooter Stevens shows up. I can't say for sure. I don't know for sure, but I believe he lives in Southern California. And if there's an opportunity for him to come to the show, I mean, that's the thing. Dave Marquez said on one of his State of the Union addresses that the Primetime Live is going to focus more on talent based on the West Coast. Now, that doesn't really apply to the NWA talent because a lot of those talents don't live in Southern California, but the Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Championship Wrestling from Arizona, the talents that are in Nevada, you know, people who are willing to drive into Long Beach to be a part of this show are going to be guys that are going to be showcased more. Now, Chris Dickinson is, as far as I know, based on the East Coast, like in New Jersey. So he's kind of the exception to the rule right now. And, of course, Miracle Mike Bennett, I don't think he lives in L.A. I think he probably lives in Florida. And, of course, our World's Heavyweight Champion, I think he lives in, like, Tennessee. So, again, all these guys coming out here to L.A., you know, they only have so many resources. And those resources are going to be dedicated to the guys who are going to be part of the show week in and week out. Now, that's not to say that you won't see talent from New Japan Strong, because, I mean, they film in the same production team. They're filmed by the same production team. And it's still local. But we'll see. I mean, there's so much to be played out, and of course, when people come to, there's certain times during those weekly pay-per-views that there'll be a Championship Wrestling from Hollywood taped the Sunday after, Saturday, Sunday after, and then there'll be tapings where Championship Wrestling from Arizona will be filming after. So there's opportunity for those who aren't signed to the NWA to come out here and participate in those tapings, because they actually have an opportunity to be showcased quite a bit. DKM says I'm old, and I want you all to know DKM's 10 years older than me. Wrestling with the MMA says I'd love to see Jake How's a backstage interview spot. Okay, so I've told this story before, and I've always kicked myself for this, because back in the day when YouTube was still relatively new and technology was still relatively crap compared to what we have now. I mean, I'm literally recording in high definition. You're seeing this live in high definition. But about 12 years ago, Marquez was shooting these shows in the Santa Monica Dojo, and they were called, New Japan Pro Wrestling USA or NWA Pro Wrestling. And he had guys like Carl the Machine Gun Anderson, Rocky Romero, TJ Perkins. They would bring talent like Juice Robinson was on some of these shows. A lot of these talents would come out here because they knew this was an opportunity to be seen. But there was nobody in the crowd. And it was 2004. I know that specifically because my eldest daughter was just born. And Dave wanted me to be a part of these shows. He sent me a message. He called me and said, "Hey Jay, I have an idea for something you could do for these shows." And I said, "Dave, I can't really do it. I've got a young daughter. What is it?" He would never tell me, and I think he could probably deny it. I think the idea was that I was supposed to do the backstage interviews, and I'm kicking myself because I wish I would have done it, but family first, of course, always. Let's see. Willie says NWA Power will be at the Long Beach TV studio. Willie, no. I'm sorry if I said that or if I made you believe that. No. The Long Beach Studios is specific for the Prime Time Live pay-per-views. Every week, Tuesdays, for 90 minutes, 6 p.m. Local time, 9 p.m. Eastern. For 90 minutes, they're in the Thunder Studios. But Championship Wrestling from Hollywood tapes in Port Hueneme, which is about 2.5 hours away from Long Beach, much longer in LA traffic. And Championship Wrestling from Arizona tapes actually at the Niles Theater in I believe that's Tucson, Arizona, which is about 8 hours away from Long Beach. Again, not really the same, but those talents who are appearing in Long Beach could make those shows in Hollywood, could make those shows in Arizona, because it's, again, not a very far drive, or if you're even flying, it's not that far of a flight either. They tape New Japan Strong out of Port Hueneme, the Ocean View Pavilion, and I'm not saying that they will ever move NWA Power from outside of the Atlanta Public Broadcasting Studios, and I hope they don't, because I think that's a perfect formula and a perfect venue for the show. But if the NWA chooses to start producing some content and getting the ball rolling, they have opportunity to shoot exclusive matches behind the scenes at the Thunder Studios. They also have opportunity to shoot exclusive material in Hollywood or in Arizona. I mean, that's the cool thing about what Marquez is doing, is this partnership can help create content for the NWA. I'm not saying it's going to. I'm not saying it's written in stone, but that opportunity is there, and I think that's pretty cool. Ron Gibson says Brian Kendrick versus Shooter Stevens. I'm all about that. I would love to see that match. Dalen Knight says, I'm excited to hear that Aaron Stevens is involved in booking of United Wrestling Primetime, and Aldis is doing fight commentary. I trust the NWA talent and their increased involvement. Dalen, I'm not exactly sure that Stevens is booked. I mean, he was on the original flyer. He was on the original announcement. I'm speculating. I don't have any proof, but I do believe, like I said, Aaron Stevens lives out in Southern California. I believe. I could be wrong. I know that he and Marquez have expressed interest in the past of working together. So seeing him out here would not surprise me one bit. But we'll see. You know, when Dave Marquez was on my podcast, he actually went into great detail saying that before he announced the United Wrestling Network Prime Time Live, that they wanted more of the NWA talent to appear on the Hollywood shows. And I think we'll see some of that. I think you're going to see a mix of United Wrestling Network, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, NWA, and those players on the Primetime Live. But I think you're going to see more NWA talent defending those titles in Hollywood and potentially Arizona as well. Michael Manning says he wishes that the Pope would challenge the champ. I don't know if the Pope is cleared to wrestle. I mean, obviously they were doing something with the Pope. When they brought him in, he was looking for his Haasman, as he would say. I feel like they were looking to do something with him and Eddie Kingston. But that never materialized, and of course it won't now because Eddie Kingston's in AEW. But yeah, absolutely, the Pope. He was one of Vince's first chosen ones. Remember, they put the ECW championship, I believe, on the Pope. Did they? Oh, no. That was somebody else. Anyways, he was one of the guys, Elijah Burke, the Elijah Burke Express. They had big hopes for him in the WWE, and I know they didn't materialize. Yeah. I'm reading your comments. Sorry if I get quiet there for a minute. Yeah, again, I would like to see that closure. I would have liked to see that blow-off match, and it still could happen. I mean, that's the thing. One of the things we're learning about the world of wrestling today, Dave Marquez has connections. I mean, he has connections with Anthem. He has connections with Ring of Honor. He has connections, obviously, with the NWA, and clearly he has an opportunity to showcase. And people who aren't signed under contracts, I mean, they could wrestle anywhere. And with this relationship, this budding relationship with the NWA and AEW, it's not every day a world champion will challenge another world champion. I mean, this wasn't just a fluke. This didn't just happen because. It's happening because the NWA wants it, AEW wants it, Thunder Rosa wants it, and we'll see. Michael Manning says could happen with Pope as champ. Again, that'd be interesting. And that's the thing, too. Again, today, September 1st, we remember Cody Rhodes winning the World's Heavyweight Championship at All In 2 years ago. I don't want to see Nick Aldis lose this belt on September 15th, but there's nothing guaranteeing that he's walking out as champion. And if Nick Aldis were to lose this title, there's a myriad of opponents that can now step up to make that next challenge. Hell, Tim Storm gets back in the mix. I would love to see Tim Storm get one more chance with that belt. Make him a 2-time champion. He can't challenge Aldis. Those hands are tied. So we'll see. Maybe. I was just looking and I can't find anything on the Pope being cleared yet. Yeah, and I don't know that he is. Maybe. I mean, someone could go to Cage Match, cagematch.net, and look up the Pope and see when the last time he even wrestled it was. Willie Bowen says, do you think that Eli Drake, and James Storm will be on Fight Network's United Wrestling Network pay-per-view event? Well, look, I know Eli Drake lives in Hollywood. I mean, he lives not far from Long Beach. There's a good chance that Eli Drake will be there. I don't know if the tag champions will be there at first. I don't know if that's something, the thing about this show is it's a weekly show, and they're not taping these and then releasing them as 90-minute shows every week. It's live. It's a prime time live. So maybe on the inaugural episode, maybe we don't see Eli Drake and James Storm, but maybe on the second episode. Oh, awesome. What's going on? Oh. Hey guys, stand by for just a second. So I've never had that before, but the battery died. But luckily I actually had one ready to go. So no, I don't know if Eli Drake will be in attendance, and James Storm, the tag team champions. I'm not sure if they'll be in attendance for the very first show, but I do believe they will be there at some point. What will be interesting is if down the road do we get United Wrestling Network champions versus NWA champions. Because you got to remember, Dan Joseph is United Wrestling Network TV champion. Will we ever see Dan Joseph versus Zicky Dice? Will we ever see the Hollywood Heritage champion Ray Rosas versus Aaron Stevens, the national champion? I don't know. More of your comments. Dave Scooby says, right now AEW needs help in their women's division. Thunder Rosa is the answer. 100%. Dave Scooby, you're preaching to the choir, man. AEW, I don't watch AEW. I probably should because a lot of guys I like wrestle there. Scorpio Sky is one of my all-time favorite professional wrestlers. I don't watch AEW. But one of the biggest complaints you hear about AEW is how lackluster the women's division is, and how much it needs something to kickstart it. Well, I mean, outside of Thunder Rosa, there isn't a whole lot of names that could really ignite that division. I mean, sure, Tessa Blanchard would be a godsend for any women's wrestling, but she's kind of got an attitude problem, and maybe they don't want her in the locker room. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But this has been a very exciting week. And as we get closer, next week we're going to take a much greater look at Mike Bennett. We're going to talk about Mike Bennett, give you some history on Mike Bennett, go into some details, his past accomplishments. We'll spend some time talking about other talents from the United Wrestling Network who are going to make their appearance on that Prime Time Live, and we're talking about Static Ray Rosas. I kind of briefly mentioned some of the names, but we'll go into a little bit more detail. Of course, any more news and information with regards to the NWA with Prime Time Live, whichever it goes, you can check out the Alliance guys, the Alliance blog, which is the Alliance Guys podcast. You can also make sure to check out This is the NWA podcast, because they'll be on in just a few hours, and I'm sure they'll have some more information. Who knows? Maybe Nick Aldis will appear on their show. Maybe Mike Bennett will appear tonight. Who knows? But we are going to call it a day here because it is 2:58. Well, that's 5:58 your time. Or maybe it's 4:58. I don't know. The time zones confuse me. We're going to call it a day, guys. Again, appreciate you checking us out. I don't know if you saw earlier, we jumped on Facebook Live earlier. You might see more of that. You might see more of the Alliance blog, kind of using other platforms to do some more just, less informative talks. You guys are always welcome to join. Again, my name is Jay Cal. This is a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. You can follow us on all social medias at the Alliance blog. And we're talking Facebook. We're talking Twitter. We're talking Instagram. We're talking, of course, YouTube. We're Tumblr. What more do you want? We're on Twitch. Give us a like, thumbs up, subscribe, all that good stuff. Gentlemen, it's always been a pleasure to talk to you. It's always been a pleasure to present the NWA for us fans. And, I think we'll call it a day. So, until next time, guys, I'll see you at the matches. And make sure to go visit my boys at This is the NWA podcast, because they'll be on in just a little bit. Until then, I bid you adieu.